So tonight we're looking at Paper 2 Intermediate Numeracy from last summer. You can see we've already filled in the front. We're looking to get pretty much through to the end of question 6 successfully, and then we want to pick up as many marks from the standard topics that we come across in the second half of the paper. We've already filled in all the formulae that we think we might want to refer to later. So, question 1, pie chart. In a survey, 720 students were asked if they preferred to take part in gym activities, team sports or individual sports. They were asked to choose just one of these options. The results are displayed in the pie chart below. How many students selected individual sports? So, individual sports looks as if it's a right angle. It doesn't state that it is. So you might, if you're feeling a bit suspicious, want to check that it is so, but it is. So it's 90 degrees, so it's clearly a quarter of the population. So I've got to work out what a quarter of 720 is. We're on a calculator allowed paper. So different ways of doing that. You can use the fraction button. Is 180, or you could have done 720 divided by 4. Really doesn't matter as long as you get it right. Part B. Carwyn plans to split team sports on the pie chart into football and other team sports. Of the students who selected team sports, 2/5 said their preferred team sport was football. What angle should Carwyn draw to represent football? So the team sports is this, so I need to know what angle I'm working with there. So you take your measurer, put the center at the center of the pie, and line the 0 up with one of the slices for team sports. So team sports is going, I've got the 0 up the page. Now, I can't read off my measurer because it's got a gap in the middle. So just to make sure I measure it correctly, I'm going to extend that line on. And there's nothing stopping you doing this on the actual paper. You want to make sure you can read it as accurately as possible. The next thing I need to do is make sure I'm reading the right scale, because the outer scale 10, 20, 30 goes towards individual sports. So I'm reading the interior scale, and I'm reading it around to 130, halfway between 130 and 140. It's 135 degrees. So that angle is 135 degrees. Now I want to divide that into two sections, and the section for football is 2/5. So what I want to do here is work out what 2/5 of that angle is. So I need to work out 2/5 of 135. Now remember, all the pain and hassle we were doing last week and in your exam this morning about division without a calculator, multiplication without a calculator, don't do that because you might make a mistake. The beauty about paper 2 is we can use this. So type it in exactly as you've written it. 2/5 times 135 equals 54 degrees. So what angle should Carwyn draw to represent football? 54 degrees. It's not asking you to draw it, you've just got to work it out. Part C. 720 students took part in the survey. Only 45% were female. Question: how many males took part in the survey? So it's not asking what percentage of males, it's how many. There's two ways you can do this. You can either find out what percentage of males, so if it's 45 female, it's going to be 55% male, and find 55% of 720, or find out how many female there were and take it away. I'll do the 55%. So 55% of, which is times, 720. Now, when I teach percentages with a calculator, I encourage you to use the percent button, which is above the open bracket, so it's shift percent. But if you've been taught to turn it into a fraction, 55 over 100, or a decimal, 0.55, it doesn't matter. But for me, if the calculator's got that button, we should be using it. So we're doing 55% times 720 and getting 396. So the marks for that question, 1 mark, I'm looking for the 180. For part B, there's 1 mark, I'm just looking to see if you've correctly measured that angle. It doesn't matter whether that 135 appears up there on the diagram or it's written down there. There's a mark for seeing you correctly measured the angle. Then there's a method mark for writing 2/5 times whatever your angle is, and an answer mark for the 54 degrees. And then for part C, there's a method mark for your percentage sum, whichever way you've done it. So 55% times 720, and then an answer mark for the correct answer of 396. So that's question 1. Question 2. Miss Price has received her total bill for water. It's based on estimates of how much fresh water is used and how much wastewater is produced. Her bill is £58.80. Miss Price's actual use of the water was as follows. So fresh water, she used 25.25 metres cubed. Wastewater, 22.31 metres cubed. And the cost, fresh water cost £1.08 per cubic metre, and wastewater cost £1.70 per cubic metre. This is your OCW question. So this is where you pay, you've got an additional 2 marks for how you organise your answer. And what you're trying to tell us, or tell them, is you're trying to figure out how much she has been overcharged or undercharged. So we know that she's used 25.25 cubic metres of fresh water, and that's charged at £1.08 per cubic metre. So the fresh water charge will be the amount she's used times the cost. So 25.25 times £1.08, £27.27. Then we work out the charge for the wastewater. And that's 22.31 times £1.70. So 22.31 times 170 gives us that. We're going to round that to the nearest penny. So it'll be £37.93 because the 7 is bigger than 5. So £37.93. So her total bill will be those two added together. £65.20. So we check now, have I answered the question? By how much has Miss Price been overcharged or undercharged? Haven't answered the question yet. I've just worked out what the bill should be. If I go back to look in the question, I can see her bill was £58.80. So she has been undercharged. She should have been charged £65.20, but she was only charged £58.80. So she was undercharged by £6.40. Now you have to say, because it says in the question, has she been overcharged or undercharged? If you just wrote £6.40, you haven't completely answered the question. So the marks for that, there's 1 mark for working out the charge for fresh water. There's 1 mark for working out the charge for the wastewater. And there's 1 mark for working out the total bill is £65.20. After that, you've then got the final mark, and in order to get the final mark, I need to see undercharged and £6.40. So that's the 4 marks for the maths. The OCW, one of those marks is for telling me what the lines of maths are you're doing. So it's not writing a story, fresh water charge, wastewater, total bill, conclusion. And then the second OCW mark is for the consistent use of units. The fact that I'm working with money and I got the pound sign everywhere. And that's how those extra 2 marks are always awarded. Part B. Remember, and this is an equivalent we don't have to learn, and they're giving it you. 1 meter cubed, squiggly equals is approximately 220 gallons. Use this conversion to calculate how much fresh water Miss Price used in gallons. So she used 25.25 cubic meters, and every cubic meter is about 220 gallons. So it's going to be 25.25 times 220, 5555. Method mark for showing what you've done, answer mark for getting it right. Part 2, explain why your answer in part 1 is not the exact number of gallons. Well, the reason for that is what I said about that squiggly equal sign. All you need to say is because means approximate. Okay, so because they're giving you that is approximately equal to, it's not exact. It would be an equal sign if that was the case. So 1 mark for that. Question 3. Emrys, Layla and Reese go shopping together for fruit. They buy pears and apples from a market stall. Emrys buys 3 pears and 1 apple for £1.22. Layla buys 3 apples for 78 pence. And Reese buys 5 pears and 3 apples. How much change will Reese receive from £5 when paying for 5 pears and 2 apples? Now this isn't an OCW question, so however you lay it out is entirely up to you. But we need to start with the apples because I've got all the information I need there. 3 apples cost 78 pence, so 1 apple will be 78 divided by 3. Which is 26 pence. So the trap you might fall into in this question is sometimes we're dealing with pounds, sometimes we're dealing with pence. So you need to be careful about that. Right, now that I know that an apple costs 26 pence, I can now look at Emrys and I can see that that there is 26 pence, and in total they are paying for 3 pears and an apple for £1.22. So if I take that apple out of their £1.22, it'll give me how much the 3 pears cost. So £1.22 take away 26 pence. So I'm either going to write 122 take away 26, or I'm going to write 1.2 take away 0.26. It doesn't matter which way you do it, so long as you're consistent. So £1.22 take away 26 is 96p. I'd probably been better off actually there working in pence. But it doesn't matter. Okay, so 3 pears cost 96 pence. So 1 pear will be 96 divided by 3, which is 32p. So now I know that each apple costs 26 pence, each pear costs 32 pence, and Reese buys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots of 32p plus 2 lots of 26p. Now it's up to you how you do this. If you use brackets, you can put that into your calculator exactly as I've written it. So I can do open bracket 5 times 32 plus 2 times 26, just like that. Or I could have worked that out separately. Lots of different ways of doing it. But we end up with £2.12 or 212 pence. I now need to go back to the question, because I need to check whether £2.12 answers my question. And it doesn't, because it's asking how much change he gets from £5. I've worked out how much he spends. So the change will be £5 less £2.12, or in pence, 500 less 212. £2.88. So you just need to be careful. I've bounced there unhelpfully, really. I'm working in pence at one point, then pounds, then back to pence, then back to pounds. Your final answer has to be in pounds, because where it's asking you to give it, it's got the pound sign. Okay? So there's 6 marks for that. So quite a lot of marks to splash out. 1 mark for 26 pence. Okay, so if you get 26 pence, you've got 1 mark. Then there's the method for finding a pair, where you're taking off the 26 pence and divided by 3, and 1 mark for the 32p. Then you've got a method mark for working out 5 lots of 32, 2 lots of 26, adding them together to get £2.12, and your final mark is for working out the change. Now if you'd have got a different value there and worked out your change from your wrong answer, you could still have got your change mark. So even if you muck up, you can still pick up marks, because you're still doing the right thing. You didn't know you've gone wrong. So it was a nice 6 mark question there. Question 4. Caris has to write a report of the water levels of the River Tad. She has recorded the depth of the water in the River Tad between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. This is shown in her graph below. What is the greatest recorded depth of water in the river? So, the depth is going up the vertical axis, the time across the horizontal. So at the greatest depth, I'm looking for where the graph is furthest up the chart, which is there. So if it helps you to just use your ruler to get where you need to be, this scale is going up in ones, so that's going to be 48 centimeters. Part B. In which of these 15-minute periods was the depth of water increasing most rapidly? Well, whether it's a depth time or a distance time, in order to see rapid change on a graph, it's where it's at its steepest. So you're looking to find where the graph is at its steepest, and you'll see that it is there. So it's between 115 and 130. So it's at this point here that it's at its steepest. Part C. Caris looks at the part of the graph between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. So it's in this region here. Describe what this tells her about the river. So in this region you can see that we're decreasing. It's going from a higher value to a lower value. So the depth is decreasing. Okay? And it's important that you use the word depth. So the depth is falling, or the depth is decreasing, it's getting shallower. You need to use depth because that gives you the context of the data. So the depth is falling, will be fine. And finally, part D, for what period of time was the depth of the water greater than 45 centimeters? So if we go back to the graph and look at 45 centimeters, we want to know how much time there is between that point and that point. Now there are 10 squares in an hour, and we've got there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squares. So it's an hour. So for that question, they're all 1, 1, 1, so that's a B mark. I'm looking for that. I need an explanation for that one, and I'm looking for the correct circled question for that one. Question 5. Now I can remember when I looked at this last year, after last year's Year 11 did this, I thought, oh my God, a pictogram on an intermediate paper. Wow, this must be really easy. But it's not as easy as it looks. So Mena is going on holiday. She hasn't decided where to go yet. In a travel brochure, Mena sees a pictogram showing the holiday destinations of 9,700 people. Complete the key for the pictogram. One suitcase represents blank people. So what I need to do is work out how many suitcases we've got represented there. One, and I'm marking them so I know when I've counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 full. Then I've got a half and a half there, so that makes another one. And so I've done that one, and then I got this little quarter one on its own. So I've actually got 24 and a quarter, or 24.25 cases. And they've got to divide into 9,700. So there's 9,700, and I want to divide that by the 24 and a quarter, or 24.25 cases. which is 400. So each case represents 400 people. So for that, there's 1 mark for me seeing 24¼ somewhere. There's a method mark for 9,700 divided by the 24¼ or whatever you had for that, and an answer mark for the A1. Part B. What is the following ratio in its simplest form? The number of people who went to Spain ratioed with the number of people who went to the USA. Now, you could work out how many people are represented by Spain and how many people represented the USA and ratio those together, but because these are directly comparable, I can just compare Spain, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 suitcases, against the USA, 1, 2, 3, 4 suitcases. But you have to be super careful because it's telling you they want it in its simplest form. And because I can divide both of those numbers by 3, no I can't, by 2, in its simplest form, it's 3 to 2. And because it's Spain to USA, it's in that order. So it can't be 2 to 3 because the first number is Spain, the second number is USA. Look at the pictogram. The ratio of the number of people who went to Wales to the number of people who went to another country is 2 to 3. Now, if I look at Wales, Wales is actually 1, 2, 3.5 suitcases. So if I can work out what the scale is, what am I multiplying that by? I can then do the same to the 3 and find out which list of suitcases has that amount. So I do 3.5 divided by 2 to work out what the scale is. So it's 1.75. So the ratio is 2 to 3. So 2 lots of 1.75 gives me 3.5 suitcases, which is what I've got for Wales. So if I now do 3 times 1.75, I'll know what country I'm looking for. So I'm looking for the country with 5.25 suitcases. The country with 5.25 suitcases is Italy. It's quite a tricky one. Not many students were scoring marks on that part there. It's quite a tricky bit. D. Mena goes, so we finish with the graph. Mena goes on holiday to France. She takes 590 euros with her on holiday. She only spends 40% of her euros. When she returns from holiday, she exchanges her remaining euros for pounds, and the exchange rate is £1 is 118 euros. How many pounds does Mena receive? So she spends 40%, so she brings back 60%. So if I work out what 60% of 590 is, you could have found 40% and take it off the 590, but often the mistake then is you forget to do the subtraction. So she comes back with 354 euros. She's turning, she needs to change euros into pounds. So if you go the exchange rate we given is pounds in, times it by 1.18 gives us euros. So we have to go backwards because we know the euros. So when we go backwards to a number machine, the operator changes to its opposite. So we have to do 354 divided by 1.18. And we get £300. So when we're exchanging pounds to euros, we multiply. When we're going the opposite direction, we need to divide. So marks for that. So we're looking at a method mark for working out the percentage and a method mark for getting the amount that she brings back, and a method mark for the dividing, and your answer mark for the £300. So question 6. This is the last of the foundation overlap. But it's quite a biggie. So Grace sees a newspaper advert for Blake's mopeds. So we've got information there. It's the best deal. If you show the ad, the moped is going to cost £400. There's an offer. They'll chuck in a reduction of 15% on the cost of the helmet. And then on top of that, you need to tax it for £37 and insure it for £151.20. Grace is planning to save for this offer. She also wants to save enough money for the first month's fuel. Now that's quite important because it's not in the ad and lots of students missed that last summer. And the moped travels 20 miles for each litre of fuel, and a litre of fuel costs £1.26. She estimates she will travel approximately 350 miles each month. Starting this month, Grace will be able to save £60 a month. Here's the question. After how many complete months will she have saved enough money, including the first month's fuel? You must show all your working. Well, let's deal with that fuel first of all. She's going to travel 350 miles in a month, and 1 litre will take her 20 miles. So the number of litres she needs, we want to see how many 20s go in to 350. So 17.5 litres is what she needs, and each litre is going to cost her £1.26. So 17.5 times £1.26 . So she needs to make sure she builds that into her calculations. We've also got a reduction on the helmet. So let's figure out the cost of the helmet. So either find 15% of 80 and take it off, or find 85%. The multiplier is going to be 85. So again, either use the percent button or turn it into a decimal, 0.85, or write it as 85 over 100, it doesn't matter. So the helmet is going to cost £68, or find 15% and subtract it. As long as you get 68, it doesn't matter. So the total cost is going to be £22.05 for the fuel, £68 for the helmet, £400 for the moped, £151.20 for the insurance, and £37 for the tax. So let me just check I've got everything. Moped ticked, helmet ticked, insurance, tax ticked, and I've dealt with the cost of the fuel as well. So if I work out what that is, £678.25. That's what she's got to save. And she's saving £60 a month. So the number of months needed will be how much she needs to save divided by 60 quid, because that's what she can save each month. And we get 11.30416. Now, let's check. Does that answer the question? After how many complete months? No, it doesn't. Because she's only putting 60 quid in once a month. She's not going to have 0.30416. So 11 months, she's not going to have enough. So she's going to have to, even though that rounds down to 11, in the context of the question, she will need to save 12 for 12 months. She would need. After 11, she wouldn't have quite enough. So, marks. There's one mark, a method mark, for correctly dealing with the percentage to get the helmet cost. There's a method mark for correctly dealing with the fuel. There's a method mark for adding all of them together. And an answer mark for the £678.25. We're then looking for another method, which is dividing that by 60 and correctly rounding up to 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, what might put you off there is when you turn the page, you see, oh my God, I've got all that on 5 lines, and they got all that space. Okay? Don't worry about having to fill all the space. Just depends how you lay out your work. But there's lots of space there for you to fill that in. So if you get to the end of question 6 and you've got everything right, you've crashed through the 40 mark barrier.